I'll call the meeting to order. Matt, would you want to go through the electronic spiel again?
Yep, this meeting is being recorded. This meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Enosburg Falls is being conducted electronically in order to ensure the safety of all attendees and to maintain compliance with Governor Scott's Executive Order 01-20 and H.681, signed into law on March 30th, 2020. Per H.681, Section 6, there is a temporary suspension of designated physical meeting location requirements of Vermont's open meeting law, VSA Section 312A1. In order to ensure that all attendees can hear clearly, your audio has been muted. When you wish to speak, please raise your hand by submitting a chat request, or if you called in by phone, pressing *9. Once acknowledged by the chair, please clearly state your name and then proceed with your question or comment. Please remember that when unmuted, all participants can hear any sounds in your environment. By default, your video is disabled, but if you wish to be visible to other attendees, you may turn your video on by clicking the video icon. Again, this meeting is being recorded. Turn back to you, Sam.
Okay, first up, we have modifications and changes to the agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to add or change?
Sam, can you do a quick roll call, please?
Sorry. So when I say your name, just say here. Leonard, Sharon?
Here.
Jason?
Leonard here.
Ooh, we lose Jason?
Here.
All right, Cindy?
Here.
Heather?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
John?
Here.
Should we go through the guests too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Let me unmute, folks. Okay. Everybody but Jim's unmuted. Go ahead, Sam.
Yes.
You're laughing at me, John. Stop.
Shauna?
Yep.
And Joseph?
Here.
All right. I think that's everybody. Okay, so we'll move on to public comment. Is anybody here from the public tonight?
I am. Jim.
I am. Do you have any comment?
Not for now, thanks.
All right, so now we need to go to review and approval for minutes, May 12th, 2020. Everybody get a chance to look those over. And if everything looks good, I'll have a motion to accept.
I motion to accept the minutes. Cindy.
Cindy with the first, so I have a second.
I'll second.
Jason the second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. All right, minutes accepted. Okay, up next we have Enosburg Falls High School request for street closures for June 13th, 2020.
I can tee this up a little bit. I've been discussing with Joseph Donnerum, the principal for the Enosburg Falls High School, possibility of doing a sort of a recognition, if you will, a small celebration for the graduating senior class of the high school this year. And Joseph has been working very hard to try to make the arrangements to do a parade type event on the 13th, which is this Saturday. The board has a letter in your board packets from Joseph outlining more of the details about it, but we've got Joseph here on the line. So Joseph, why don't we turn it over to you and let you talk with the board.
We're asking folks, the graduates and the families, to arrive here at Enosburg Falls High School by way of Dickinson Avenue, by way of Main Street, and to everyone gather here around 2 p.m. That's when we would like to get the ball rolling. What that will entail is a line of cars will form in the parking lot down, starting at the far end, the far entrance to the campus, and will wind itself around the bus lane that comes in front of the school. And one by one, each graduate in a car will pull up with her or his family, and they will get out. The graduate will go up to the podium, get a diploma and a gift bag and their banner, and get back in their car and then start to form a line, which will then go down to the elementary school. I was told by Greg from the newspaper that he is working to get us a fire truck to begin and end that processional line that's due to travel the traditional parade route that folks have used, going up Pleasant Street up to 105 Main, turning left down the hill back into the village. The whole event, because we haven't done this before and we're sort of pacing ourselves and allowing some time, would take from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to the very latest 4:15, 4:30. So I've been in touch with the Lions Club officials, and they have confirmed for me in writing that they would block off the side streets that lead to Main along the parade route, actually, and then remove those barriers once the parade is over. So it may not take as long as from 2 to 4:30, but it might take that entire time. So originally we were thinking or hoping that we might have fireworks at night. That's why we originally thought that we would host it in the evening, but that fell through for a number of reasons. And actually this has worked out better because when the parade is over, families are free then to go home and watch the video of the simulated graduation that we filmed here with Northwest Access TV 2 weeks ago. So that's it. We kind of had the simulated graduation and the real deal on the 13th, which was the originally planned day, pre-COVID date of graduation. So we're keeping that date, the 13th. We're just not having fireworks. We are having passing out of diplomas and other awards and gifts, and then having a parade and then sending folks home to celebrate with their families and friends.
Joseph, if I heard you right, I think you said from 2 to 4:30, and your letter says 2 to 3:45. So has that time changed, or?
3:45 would be a generous time allowed for the handing out of diplomas and awards. Like I can say, I've not done this before. No one here at school has done it before. It might not take till 3:45, but we're looking at the parade would probably start no later than 3:45. That's why I said it would be over no later than 4:30.
Okay, so you're looking to close the streets then from 2 to 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you have enough people to do traffic? You said the lines are there. You talk to law enforcement at all?
We have 6 members of the sheriff department coming here. Plus I have staff, both faculty and support staff here to organize the whole event here on Dickinson and then to get it jump started from the elementary school.
Okay.
Dan, I think Shauna had a question.
I just had a quick question. Are you expecting that the entire parade route is going to have to be shut down starting at 2? You're just thinking the parade route will be shut down starting at 3:30, 3:45.
Exactly. Dickinson will be closed to non-graduation connected traffic from 2 o'clock on.
So it's not shutting down the entire Main Street and all those streets?
Just Dickinson from 2 till around 3:30, 3:45. And then from the time the parade begins, we're looking at a start date for the parade, start time for the parade, 3:45. So it may not take that full length of time, as I just wanted to be generous and not limit ourselves to a shorter time when we actually might need something longer.
So if we close the road down, say from 3:30 to 4:30, that should be plenty of time.
I would say.
And you're gonna have Main Street closed for that small time?
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Okay. And if there's any cars parked on Main Street that may need to get out during that time, I would assume that there's some way that you can notify whoever may be parked.
Yeah, I'll be talking with the Lions Club folks prior to that date, within the next day or so, and really fine tuning the details.
Okay.
The Lions Club's the group that normally shuts down for the parade for the Dairy Fest, so they've done this
Yes.
before. They've got the system.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just a parade of cars, so if there's cars parked on the street, I don't see that there would be any issue with that anyway.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on this, or how do we feel? We want to let them go ahead? I mean, I'm sure this is the least we can do for our graduates, provided they didn't have a
For sure.
graduation this year.
Do we make a motion? I'm happy to make a motion.
I think a motion would be safe.
Okay. I make a motion to approve road closures for graduation parade.
All right, Heather with the first. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Cindy with the second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. All right. Sounds like we're getting a parade.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful collaboration among parents, townsfolks, the faculty. It's a wonderful show of support for our seniors, and the seniors and their families are super appreciative. So they were excited about this vote tonight. We just wanted your final approval.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah. Thank you. And the rest of the group for everything you're doing.
You.
Thanks so much.
Okay, up next we have Vermont League of Cities and Towns resolution for the COVID-19 pandemic emergency.
The board flips in your packet past Joseph's letter. You'll see a copy of a resolution that was drawn up by Vermont League of Cities and Towns related to COVID-19 issues and how future funding to help with relief efforts on COVID-19 may impact local governments across the country. So there is a National League of Towns organization which covers, kind of national issues for the whole country regarding local governments, but each state in the country also has its own version of what in Vermont we call Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They all have slightly different names, but they're semi-public organizations that work on behalf of local governments within the state that they exist. So the National League of Cities and Towns has circulated this petition to all of these sub-state municipal associations and is asking for each community in the country to adopt this resolution and send it to their appropriate state league of cities and towns. And if you read down through the resolution, what it's asking for is for your local government officials to support the idea of directing at least a part of federal dollars that are, currently being dispersed to states across the country and the federal government as well. And to ask our congressional members in Vermont to make sure that at least some of this money is designated specifically to go to local governments, because local governments are also being, pretty seriously affected by the pandemic, by COVID-19. And it's not, it's not just the feds, it's not just the state governments, local governments too have taken a real beating in some cases. And so that's what this resolution VLCT has provided to you, is asking you to do, to just support having our congressional members designate in law that at least some of this funding, this federal funding that's being directed to COVID-19 issues, will go directly to local governments.
Okay. So they're just looking for our support.
Yeah, if the board adopts the resolution, then I would clean it up a bit. This was, kind of a boilerplate one they sent over. You've got a few blanks you'd have to fill in, just, the appropriate name of the community, the date, stuff like that. But it's, all the language is in there for the resolution. So if the board adopted it, they're requesting specifically that the chairman of the board sign the resolution. So Sam, I would, after I clean it up, probably I would just email it to you. Then you could email it back to me and I'll forward it on to VLCT.
Okay. What does the board think?
Makes sense.
Yeah, should
Yeah.
probably adopt it.
Motion, Jason?
Probably adopt this.
Okay, so is that a motion?
Yeah, you'd have to actually adopt. It's a resolution.
Okay.
So yeah, you'd have to vote on it and approve it.
It sounds like we got a first from Jason. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second that.
Second. So all those in favor for adopting the resolution, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. All right.
Sam, I heard 3 seconds. Which one was our official second?
First.
Sorry.
Zoom meetings are great.
Well, I'm sorry. Who was the second?
Heather.
Heather, thank you.
Okay, and then I can always stop down too and sign that if you want. Either way.
Okay, sure. You want me to give you a call then when I got it set?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Now we'll move on to revised 2020 paving. There's been some setbacks.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Cindy.
I was gonna say, it looks good to me. As long as it gets done, I don't care when it gets done.
Yeah, and I hope we can still do this. As everything has been affected by COVID-19, so have a lot of the projects that we had expected to do this year, and probably the paving projects were the biggest projects we had planned for 2020. We're doing 4 different road paving projects. The largest of those is repaving Orchard Street. But there's a kind of a separate part to the Orchard Street paving project that needs to also get done first before the actual paving can start. And that is some of the stormwater replacements that we were going to do along Orchard Street, and also Water Tower Road. Those 2 streets were going to have some wastewater and stormwater corrections made to them. So you can't pave Orchard until you get that part of it done. So Gary and I sat down to try and reboot this project, talk about the 2 different projects within this, and try to come up with a way that at least gave us a chance to get these things done this year. I think everyone would really like to see these projects done in 2020 if we can do it. So we had many discussions with Wayne Elliott from Aldrich and Elliott Engineering. He's the engineer that is working on the stormwater part of this. So the schedule that you've got in your packet here is what we came up with. So next week, we expect to have the advertisements and bid specs back from Wayne on the stormwater project. Get those ads out to the papers and websites on the 18th. Have bids due to us on July 9th. And then your July 14th meeting, the board would review and approve a bid award. Hopefully we get a good one. All we need is one good one. And then have the project start on or around August 7th with a completion date of August 28th. So that's that stormwater sub-project within there. And then the paving, so there's some overlap in these two schedules in order to, make it come out so that it was, the paving part of it was still being done at a reasonable time of the year. You don't want to push it too far into the latter end of the year. Otherwise, you might have problems with the performance of the job over time. So there's a little bit of overlap in these, but so July 30th, we would get the ads out to the papers and websites for the paving part, all 4 parts of the paving project, with bids due on August 20th. The board would review and approve a bid award on August 25th. Project start date no later than September 16th. And we'd be looking for a completion date of October 16th. So that would give a contractor a full month to get all 4 of these done, which we feel is very adequate. Normally, we wouldn't really want to see someone going into the second week of October, but the last 3 years we've had such nice Octobers. We think we can do it. The last 3 years we've had really beautiful Octobers until the last week of October. And then the last week of October just like fell off the cliff. And the last 3 years, that's how it's been. 3 weeks of beautiful weather and then boom, then you're into early winter. So that's the schedule that Gary and I came up with. We think that this can work. Gary put out a couple of feelers to some paving contractors to see whether, they would still bid a project that late in the year. And he got positive feedback from the people he talked to. They said, yeah, as long as you gave us enough time, and they agreed that mid-October would be enough time, they'd still be interested in bidding it. So we think that this can work. So just wanted to go over this revised schedule with you guys, let you know, where we are with this paving project for 2020, and see what other thoughts you guys have. Does it seem okay to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
October seems fine. And even if we get our side of the stuff done on Orchard Street earlier than that, then we can always bump that up, right?
Yeah, I think we can.
Jim, you had a comment? No, I don't need you here.
He's
Thank you.
muted.
Yep.
Okay.
There you are.
I would have thought that was a treat for you to know that I was muted and that you guys could control that. I don't take offense at all. Does Premier Paving ever bid on these projects? Does that name ever come in?
I've heard of Premier, Jim, but I can't recall whether they've ever bid on any of our paving projects or not.
They're out of Milton, Georgia.
Yeah.
They slam it out of the park. They've done a lot of large parking areas for me now. I understand roads are different. I know the owner. I'll send him a note, and if he's interested, he can talk to you. They slam it out of the park, and they're very price competitive. You know, when I bid them against other people, they just come in at a good price, not the lowest, but a good price. So just a comment.
Yeah, sure.
Like a profit. Paving's very profitable. If you do it, it must be very profitable because people just come out of nowhere to do it and then seem to last forever. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be great if you know someone that, you know, might be interested, let them know. It's a public bid, so any, you know, paving contractor can put a bid in on it.
I have a question. If we approve this on August 25th, how come the start date's not until the middle of September?
Well, we gave some cushion in there because we're assuming that most contractors are going to be straight out at that point. You know, when you're talking end of summer like that, you know, the bids are actually due August 20th. And you guys will be looking for an approval on the 25th. We believe probably most contractors, the end of August, are still going to be going full tilt. And we wanted to build enough time in there for them to plan to do our project, because it's extremely unlikely that if we tell them, you know, well, you got to be on this, you know, in 2 weeks, that they're going to say, yeah, I got all my guys sitting on a bench ready to go and we're going to be there. They have to make preparations and arrangements too, and we'll have to, you know, get contracts signed, make sure insurance documents are in place. So some of that eats up a little bit of time too. You know, it could be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks just working out, getting all the signatures and the administrative documentation for the contract and insurance requirements. So, you know, if they can start sooner, great. I mean, we would love to have them get this done as quickly as possible, but we thought, you know, we should at least set a start date to tell them, you know, don't put this off to the last minute, please. We want you on the job at least by this time. And we're giving you a whole month for a completion date.
So they can start on or before that date.
Right, but I mean, if they say, good, you know, we're ready to go and we can start working on this September 5th, wonderful, all the better.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess by the sounds, we're all in agreement that that schedule looks okay. Do we need a motion for that, John? Or?
No, you don't need to take any action on it. I wanted to talk with you guys about it, make sure you understood, you know, where staff was with the project, and make sure you guys were okay with what we were thinking.
Shoot.
Okay. Any questions on that? If not, we'll move on to appointment for delinquent tax collector.
Okay, so Andy Bolio, you guys recall, is our delinquent tax collector. That position is appointed by the Board of Trustees and serves 3-year terms. Andy's appointment expired in March, the end of March of this year. So if the board would like Andy to continue in that capacity, you need to reappoint him. I did have a conversation with Andy. He has told me that he would be interested in serving again as delinquent tax collector for the village. So, yeah.
If I could add a comment on that. I would like to share with the board that Andy has done an incredibly good job in this capacity for the village. We're at an all-time record low in terms of remaining delinquent taxes at this point this year. So I highly support his reappointment.
Sounds like he's the man for the job.
As long as you had a conversation with him. I mean, he is 87. We don't want to.
Yeah, yeah, he's
Thrown to
awful
the
spry.
wolves.
He's awful
I
spry
know,
for his
I
age,
know.
though. Yeah, no, I did call him and have a conversation with him, and he said he was game for another term. So
All right. It's got my vote.
I'd motion to reappoint Andy Bolio.
All right, Jason with the first, do I have a second?
I second that.
Cindy with the second. All those in favor of making Andy Bolio our tax collector, say aye.
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 I,
All right. That's that. All right, up next we have manager's priorities list. Sorry, 2020 emergency management plan.
in your package, you will see a draft of the local emergency management plan for 2020. I realize that we just adopted one of these in February, but as I explained to the board at that meeting back in February, that was actually a plan that was supposed to have been adopted in 2019. It was our 2019 plan, but Northwest Regional Planning Commission was very late in getting the management plan to us. NRPC is the organization that works with both the town and the village to get these plans together and compile them every year, and they were just really late getting it to us. Usually they get it to us late spring or sometime in the summer at the latest. So as I said in February, don't be surprised. We're going to have to do another one of these, and it probably won't be very, very far away that we got to adopt another one. So here it is. This is our 2020 municipal plan, and needs to be signed by myself and Larry Jarvis, the select board chair for the town. Yeah, and so this is, this is a requirement of the state. All municipalities have to have one of these in place. I went through it. I believe Billy Joe Draper is going through it on the town. I don't think they've discussed this yet at a select board meeting. And also Sean Coleman from Northwest Regional Planning Commission has been through this as well to make sure we've got, the most updated names and information and addresses in here. And as far as we can tell, we've got everything that we need to in the plan right now, and the information appears to be accurate.
I know we got it back in February. There's some pretty outdated information on it.
Yeah. The one that we adopted in February had like some scribbled marks in it because we were just trying to get it done quick because it was so late. And so rather than, going back and forth with clean drafts, people were just scratching names and phone numbers and stuff out and writing them in. But this is a much cleaner version.
John,
Matt?
I think Heather was going to say something.
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering what the process is if a name change, like a position were to switch, because the Enosburg Elementary, Michelle Lucier is retiring this year, and the elementary school has a new principal as of July 1st.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you know who that person is, we
It's
might
Jennifer.
as well put her information in here. It's probably just her name though, right?
Yeah, Jennifer Hubbard, and so it'd be jennifer.hubbard@fnesu.org for the email address.
Okay, we'll have to get another draft out to the town then.
And Heather, that's going to be a definite change.
Yep, she's already signed a contract and she's been approved by the board.
Okay. And that's elementary school.
Correct.
Okay.
Just making sure
All
I
right.
have our last. Jen-
Okay, so do
I have two,
we accept this with that modification?
I have two other observations if you're interested.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Matt.
On page 13, it has the health officer listed as Henry Newberger. I believe that's now still Larry Jarvis.
Yep. Good catch, Matt.
On page 14, Cindy Miner's last name is spelled M-I-N-E-R. And on page 5, it has a list of daycare providers.
I was just gonna go say that.
Go ahead, Cindy.
The learning tree is not on there. Which is Rhonda McAllister.
So you want another daycare center listed on there?
It's in our village, so it should be, right?
Okay. So Rhonda McAllister.
Yes.
Do you have any other information?
Cindy, perhaps you could just email to John the contact info for that.
Okay. Let me write that down so I can find it. They are reopening June 15th. So that's address, email, and phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those were my only observations.
Does anybody else have anything that they caught? Okay, so do you want to get another copy of this to us? Or,
Well, if we make, yeah, we can do it that way, or if you're fine, you know, as long as we make those changes,
okay,
you can adopt it with those changes. But if you want to reschedule it for your next meeting to, you know, have another go at it, we can do it that way too. Either way, I think.
it's up to the board. We can do either accept it with the changes we made tonight, or we can get it.
I think we can accept it now. We can trust that John can spell my name correctly and add other people's names, right?
Yeah.
Do my best.
Okay.
You want to make a motion, Cindy, to accept with the changes we made tonight?
Yes.
Okay, Cindy with the first, do I have a second?
A second.
All right, Heather with the second. All those in favor of accepting this 2020 plan here, say aye.
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 All right, we have emergency management plan. Okay, so up next we have manager's priority list.
Thank you, Sam. Every spring, I like to take a little time at a board meeting and go through a priority list with the board for things that I understand the board expects as priorities for me, for the village manager. And, you know, just discuss them a little bit, go over with you what my understanding of my priorities for the year are. And make sure that, we're both on the same page with this. Gives us a little bit of time to have some dialogue about that. Now, this is not intended to be a complete list of, everything that I would work on through the course of the year, or, other issues or items that come up through the course of the year, which is inevitable, always happens. But it's intended to be a priority list, the things that you consider to be the most important and you really want me to focus on. So you've got a list of that on one page, and then directly in back of that, I put the list that the board had looked at and we discussed from last year, just so you can see the two as comparison. And, some things are ongoing. They'll be there multiple years or maybe every year. And some things, are just 1 or 2 year projects. And so you'll see them disappear off the list. And when you look at the two lists, you'll see, some of the things that were on last year's list are not on this year's list because we finished those things. So I'll just go down through these, and if the board has any questions about that, please let me know. Also, if there are things you think shouldn't be on here, that's helpful for me to know. Or if there are things that are not on here that you think should be on here, that's also helpful for me to know.
Is this list listed as, is it a weighted list? Like the one at the top has more priority than the one on the bottom?
No.
Okay.
No, we can do that if the board wants to, say these are the top 10. I think there's like 19 or something like that on here. But if you wanted to go through them and say, John, these are the top 10, don't worry about the other ones. We really want you to focus on these. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then, that's fine. The board has never asked that. But this is just for, for my information and my comfort level to know that I'm focusing on the things that the Board of Trustees want me to focus on. I kind of like to, at least one meeting, spend a little bit of time talking about, what I perceive to be the priorities that have come out of either our budget discussions or other board meetings through the course of the year. And then, get some feedback from you guys about it. So the first one there, that's one that, it's on there every year, keeping on top of electric department activities and requirements. Then VEPSA Board of Director duties. As you guys know, I represent the Village of Enosburg Falls as the board of director on VEPSA's organization for this municipality. Then VEPSA also has a legislative committee as part of those duties, being a board of director for VEPSA, and I am on that legislative committee as well. You guys are, well, some of you may not be aware. Some of you that have been on the board for a few years are aware that I'm also a board of director representing Vermont on the Northeast Public Power Association. And that's a regional organization that represents public power, municipally owned government, electric utilities, as well as electric co-ops. Co-ops are also considered public power in all 6 states in New England. So covers Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. 75 members on that organization's docket. VEPSA, if you're curious, has 11 municipal members of Vermont Public Power Supply Authority in Vermont. Then the Elm Street Bike and Pedestrian Sidewalk Project. The 2020 road paving project, we just went over that. The Hydro Footbridge replacement, that's a project that through the course of our budget discussions, the board laid out as something they would like to see done with our facility. Also, that project was recommended to be done by Paul Nolan, our consultant working on our behalf for our FERC relicensing efforts. And that bridge is in tough shape, as you guys know. It's actually even in a little tougher shape now because unfortunately last week we had some vandalism over on the island, and some kids went over there, threw some bricks through Kendall Plant, and also went over to the footbridge and smashed some of the railings up. So not very nice, but relatively minor stuff on the whole. We've got it taken care of. We've actually closed the bridge off now. We've taped it off because with the additional damage the vandals did to that bridge and knocking some of the structure apart, we just don't feel comfortable having anybody walk on it now, and we're working on replacing it and getting a good steel footbridge in there. So we hope to have that done, maybe by the fall, but that's something else we're working on. Wastewater long-term control plan, wastewater CSO monitoring project, the wastewater stormwater replacement of Orchard Street and Water Tower Road. We talked about that a little. Hydro facility FERC relicensing. That's one that's going to go on for a while. It's expected to be a 5-year process to have our FERC license renewed for our hydro facilities, and we started that process in earnest in April of 2018. So, we're a little over 2 years into that process now, what's expected to be a 5-year process. Then working with the Enosburg Initiative Group, the Village Master Plan Project, the Vital Village Pedestrian Safety Improvement Study. So this is kind of the next step in the Vital Village study that was completed last year, you guys recall, and we were able to get a grant to help us take the next 4 priorities that were identified within that Vital Village study and use some grant money to put paper to pen and get some engineering documents put together, put some more flesh on the bones of these next 4 projects within that study that were identified as the next priorities for our community there. And so we've been working on that too, and that project is underway. Or we got to hire someone first. That's the point we're at with it. But we're getting all of the bidding documents together, and those are actually due soon. Tomorrow, maybe. Yeah, I think it is. So then Kendall Plant controls upgrade. That's another hydro facility upgrade. Electric department rate increase. Union contract negotiations. So some of you may not be aware of this. Some of you that have been on the board for a few years will recall that our union contracts are due to expire August 23rd of this year. So we need to renegotiate the union contracts. Be a little bit interesting, given the COVID-19 issues, how we're going to do this. Just today, actually, I got some correspondence from Tim Watkins, who's the union rep for Local 300 down in South Burlington. And we sort of touched a little bit about, how we're going to conduct this, because normally, we have quite a few people in a room together, and we don't have, if we're going to meet the requirements of the social distancing rules, it's going to be a challenge to get everybody we typically have during these union negotiation meetings in the same room together. So Tim and I had just a little bit of some correspondence via email back and forth about that today. But that's something that's going to be coming up with you guys too very shortly here, and we'll have to start getting into the union renegotiations on their contracts. And then COVID-19 state of emergency issues and regulations. And my hope is this will not be on here by the end of this year, but I guess we'll see what the virus does and whether that ends up staying on here for next year too. I hope not. I hope the virus decides to have a relatively short life and leave us soon, but we'll just have to see. So those are, those are the things, and sitting down and thinking about, what seemed to be the biggest priorities in 2020. Those are the things that I came up with. Again, this isn't intended to be a list of every single project or issue that I would be working on as village manager, but these would be the priorities, the ones you really want me to focus on and make sure we get right. And I'm open to any feedback or conversations that you guys would like to have. Or if you think that's good and looks good, then I'm okay with that too.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, you've got some good stuff going on this year. So. What do you guys think? Did that look good, or is there anything you guys want to focus on, or anything you want to add to the list?
Not at this time, but I'm sure we can come up with something.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys.
So now it's time for the COVID-19 update.
Yeah, so just a little bit of an update on some things that have been going on over the last week to 2 weeks related to COVID-19. You may be aware of these things already, but just thought it might be good to take a little time during the board meetings just to at least hit some of the highlights on this, since this virus is having such a huge impact to everybody in our society. First thing, I'll let you guys know that the state of emergency was extended to June 15th by the governor. It was previously set to expire on May 30th, and then he extended it to June 15th, and we'll have to see if he extends it again. If I had to take a guess, I would say he probably will, but we'll just have to see, what the governor's next actions are on that. Also, the governor, along with that, has started a slow reopening of Vermont's economy. A lot of restrictions involved in, all of the movements toward reopening the economy. But there have been some things that have started to reopen again. And those really began around June 1st. And there was some more things that were allowed by the governor yesterday, June 8th, that became possibilities for businesses that are looking for opportunities to get themselves reopened again in limited ways. So some of the things that were allowed now under the changes made to the executive order are restaurants are now allowed to be open with limited capacity. I believe it's 25% or 10 people, whichever is greater for your particular restaurant seating capacity. Also, they're allowed to have outdoor seating service now if you have that available. If you've got, space with your restaurant's property to have outdoor seating, you can have that as well. Retail is allowed to be open now, again, with some restrictions. And the opening of hairdressers and barber shops are again allowed to be open now with restrictions. They have to be very careful. And then one of the things that came out of the changes effective yesterday, June 8th, where the state is now allowing limited capacity for gyms and health centers to reopen again. So, those are pretty big changes when you think about where the state was, in the beginning of April, where essentially everything was closed down and we were sort of in not completely a lockdown situation, but pretty close to it. These are some, I think, significant steps forward to try and get people working again and get the economy reopened slowly in a responsible manner. Let's see, I also wanted to make the board aware that the Public Utility Commission has again extended the moratorium on electric utility disconnections. So this is the third extension that they have done on this since the whole COVID-19 virus became a part of our lives. And the current moratorium, as passed by the PUC, goes through July 31st. So what that means essentially is we can't disconnect an electric department customer for non-payment. So we'll have to see if they continue to extend those moratoriums or not. But I just wanted to keep you guys abreast of that as well. So that moratorium has now been extended till July 31st. And then lastly, related to COVID-19, just wanted to make the board aware, if you're not aware, that although things are improving in the state, and I think Vermont, through a lot of sacrifice, has done a pretty respectable job of flattening the curve with COVID-19. The virus is still here. It's in our state, and we all need to be aware of that and be smart about it. So last week, there was sort of a new rash of outbreaks in the city of Winooski. And there were, I think as of Friday, there were about 35 new cases, all kind of in the same general area from what I understand, although I don't know everything about it, but the little bit that I've read and heard about it, it seemed to be in a very concentrated area in Winooski. And so, these were people that all had contact with each other, and it was spreading rapidly that way. It has, over the weekend and through yesterday, though, spread a little bit more. And the latest numbers that I have seen from the state had that particular outbreak in Winooski up around 68 or 69 people affected by it now. And I think of those, they said that 9 of them live in Burlington. So it's gone now beyond just the city of Winooski. It's this new outbreak has gone into some Burlington residents as well. But the state seems to be tracking this very quickly, trying to identify where the new sources are and where the new people are that have been infected with the virus. And it may go on for a little bit longer, but I know the state is focused like a laser beam on that area right now, trying to nip this in the bud as quickly as they can. But it's a reminder. It is still there, even if we're doing well in Franklin County right now, which I think we are. We've, for several weeks now, not had any new outbreaks, at least according to the state reports that I've seen. Chittenden County is just south of us, and, they are still grappling with this. It is still in the state, and we still need to be aware of it. So that's all I'll say on that. Just wanted to, spend a few minutes talking with you guys about some things I was aware of that are going on with COVID-19 at the state level.
Any new developments in regards to holding public meetings online?
You mean about, so not having them online, but doing them in person? Yeah. No, there's no real changes to, the social distancing rules that are in place under the executive order. So although, the governor has now said that you can have meetings of up to 25 people in a designated area, that's with the caveat that you've got enough space in your building that you can have 25 people and still be practicing, the social distancing rules. And I think for us, that's going to be the challenge for a while, I'd say ongoing, because, other than the emergency services building, there isn't really a public space that I can think of in this community that could hold, a significant number of people. If you got, for example, in our meeting room, you guys may recall when this COVID-19 issue started and the new restrictions came out, Matt and I spent some time taking some measurements in our meeting room and trying to figure out, okay, so if this is how much space we have to provide to each person, how many people can we really get in here? And it's not very many. We can get like 8 or 9 people in our meeting room with, practicing social distancing, which means, if you get even 1 or 2 people from the public in there, and you got the cameraman too, now you're at capacity. And if you get even 1 more person come in, then you've got to close down the meeting. So you've lost an opportunity to, conduct business in a meeting if you've got to do that. And that's, I think, really what's at issue right now. So at least for the foreseeable future, I think we're going to have to conduct our meetings electronically. But as soon as, something changes in that, I certainly will let the board know.
Okay. I think Sean has his hand up.
I do. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Sean.
Just for the board's info, I spent the better part of yesterday, more time than I wanted to, equipping the emergency services building with some new tech, including a fancy new camera that can facilitate some hybrid meetings. So a limited amount, primarily just the board, or in your case, the trustees, would attend, and then all public members would need to continue to attend virtually. So there is some availability to do some sort of hybrid meetings, should the trustees look to do that at some point. The town acquired some equipment, and I spent the time to kind of outfit the emergency service building with that stuff yesterday. So just to make you aware that that does exist.
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
Okay.
My understanding is you still have to have a mask on if you're
Yep.
2 people in a
Yep.
space. So
Yep, 6 feet.
possibly until, 6 feet with a mask on. So that the mask part, I think, makes a hindrance for meetings for sure, as well as the space part.
Yeah, that's a good point, Heather, is, if you are going to be physically together in a room, you do have to put your mask on. And so, yeah, that's another good point to make, is it does make it kind of difficult to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Something you wanted to add?
Yes, I got an email. I sent an email to Billy Joe about the emergency services building, and the select board hasn't had an active discussion about opening up that building. The Opera House is available. Imagine that the Armory was out there and available, and that would be a space, but certainly the Opera House is big enough for a public meeting where people can spread out. I didn't understand the 6 feet and the mask. I mean, I've been to the doctors, the dentist, I've seen that happen, you know, and the arrows, this and that. I have mixed feelings. I mean, I was gonna, you know, if you had 25 people, that means there's a riot in town. You know, let's, you know, call it what it is. I mean, it's easy for me, and I'm the only person here, and now Sean's there, that are not, you know, not a trustee or staff person. I don't, you know, I feel like the right thing to do is to have public open meetings where people can come, and I realize this is open, so pardon me, just to have, you know, an accessible meeting. And then I think about what the attendance level is, which is pathetic. So I'm sort of arguing the wrong, you know, I'm arguing for something that may be the correct thing, but not the right thing, you know, or what's necessary just because you're not getting a crowd. The initiative is we're gonna have a meeting. We're gonna have a meeting, hopefully not this Thursday, but next Thursday, our first live meeting. And we'll either have it at the Quincy, or I just realized I can talk to the Opera House about that as having a tremendous amount of floor space. I guess we'll just provide snacks so that people are able to take their mask off and have a snack. Because you go into a restaurant and everybody has their mask on, and then they all start eating and taking their mask off. It's a little silly to me personally. That, you know, that's, you know, is it or isn't it kind of an issue there. That being said, so anyway, that's it. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
My understanding was that the Opera House was closed for the rest of the year.
It may be, but that just means the door's locked. I mean, it doesn't,
Right.
you know, there's, you know, it's closed for activities, but it's owned by the town. It's available as a public space. You know, I get your conference room can't do it. I get that. I totally understand that. You wouldn't, you know, it doesn't, even though it might meet the rule of law by a 6-foot rule, it doesn't meet the intent of it, right? I mean, you're all packed into a room with no active ventilation or anything. So I get that. But emergency services building's got a lot of real estate. And I think, frankly, it's a shame it's not available for certainly public meetings like this. And then along with Sean's new camera, I think that's great. That gives people the choice. People can then make the choice to come into a room with 10 or 12 people or call in and be video. They get that active choice to do that. You're not requiring them one way or the other to participate. And that's how we'll do the initiative for whatever it's worth, to see what happens. When we've done our video stuff, if we've got 10 people, that's, well, yeah, probably 10 or 12 people on a screen. That's been, you know, our volume of folks. Hard for me to know if you open up the doors, you know, metaphorically, whether, you know, we'd get a full house or not. Yeah, thanks again.
I had a couple of things that kind of popped out in my mind, John, as you were talking about the different points here. And I'll just kind of go in reverse order. The Winooski outbreaks, they're really sensing that it's an issue around like an equity issue and around translations and stuff for non-native English speaking populations. And I was wondering, has there been much work done in the village, Enosburg in general, on translating information to our non-native English speaking community members?
No, I mean, you guys have seen everything that we put out. We write all of our material in English. We have not historically, you know, done separate translations in Spanish or French or any other language.
Do we have any
answer.
residents that are English is not their first language?
Yes, okay. We've been translating stuff through the school, and I don't know the number of the translations. I helped to organize, not translate some of the stuff, but you know, a couple of different languages at least. And it was definitely very helpful for some families where just navigating English documents could be really challenging.
To add to that, sorry, Julie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ellen Stanley would likely be available for French translation. I know she's been teaching French lessons, and then Yvonne is a native Spanish speaker. So, and she's done translations for some PR work that I've done in the past as well. So she's available should you need a Spanish translator.
Yeah, I think it would be good for us to think about that, like going forward, just making sure that we have stuff available in multiple languages for those populations.
So Heather, just to clarify, you're saying everything that we put out, you think should be in multiple languages?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say everything. I would refer to somebody who's has a handle on that, but like emergency things or more official notices or something. I don't really know where the line is on that. I just know that it came up with us in the school about making sure to communicate with our families. And again, the feeling is that some of the Winooski outbreak had to do with the information not being accessible to those communities. And there are organizations within the state that that this is a priority for them, and they would be able to assist in like what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So something to look into, I think, just to make sure that we are supporting other members in our community.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and sorry for someone that's not from Vermont. That never even occurred to me. Everybody here is, you know, English, they're Vermonters, so I haven't seen all the different people like in LA, so it never even occurred to me because everything I used to do was, you know, English and Spanish, and it never even occurred to me that we should do that here. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So I think it's time to look into the conversation, into what this would mean, how to move forward with it. The second one is kind of on the lines of outreach too. What is the role of the village, or who is responsible of sharing, or what do I want to say, helping business owners understand changes in COVID-19 regulations? Because they're not easy to necessarily navigate through.
Yeah, there's no designated person in the village. This is a new event. This is something, it's a pandemic. And our societies all over the world are, you know, taking steps to try and combat it. We're taking steps that have never been attempted before. There is nobody that is designated from the village government specifically to work with businesses to help them conform with restrictions that they may have. I do know that Sean Kayo, who is the town development director, has been conducting workshops with businesses in the area to try and assist them through you know, different business techniques and negotiate what some of the restrictions are and how they could affect their business. But you know, Sean is here with us. He could probably speak much better than I could because he's been running those workshops. But outside of Sean, I'm not aware of anyone in either the village or the town that, you know, has been doing that. I think Sean just kind of took it upon himself, you know, as the new development director for the community to start doing that and try and find a way to be proactive and working with businesses like that. But Sean, is there anything more you'd like to add?
Not much. I mean, that was pretty much it. I mean, we, right at the very beginning, we seen the need and potentially what I could do. You know, for those who didn't know, I on the economic development site, I did create kind of a guide of local businesses and who was open, who wasn't. I reached out to all of the businesses at the very beginning, and I have done kind of periodic checkups. I did kind of my first round of, somewhat in-person checkups this week, where I went to a number of businesses and just, checked in and see how things were going. Through the process of the relief programs, I tried to communicate that information to them. That is a question that I've had as far as the restrictions and potentially, and more so on the enforcement side of, I've tried to, get that information out to local businesses as much as I can. I'm still building my network of information and emails. I've been using the EBA a lot to disseminate that information as well. Facebook, website, sometimes on Front Porch Forum. I did host a daily Zoom call for month of May, I believe, where we did it every day during the week. That was, there were some days that were really great. We had as many as 12 to 13 attendees, mostly local businesses. And then other times it was, maybe 3 to 4. So it was, it really comes down to the businesses committing to those differences and changes. With, I've done what I can do. It's not directly my role, but it kind of is, to, be somewhat of a liaison and try to help them out and try to understand all the different programs and restrictions that exist. But, it really does come down to making standards. And I have had that same question of, okay, who's going to kind of check in, make sure that they and really isn't there really isn't that person.
If I can add to that, the village's website also has links to Sean's information on the economic development site, as well as links directly to the state economic development for their information for businesses and residents.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Sean, for all that work that you're doing. Yeah, I just want to make sure our business owners are understanding and taken care of. Want them to survive this as much as everybody else.
Yeah, but I think Sean started to touch on sort of maybe a sub issue of your question, which, although I was losing part of what Sean was saying towards the end, but I think he was starting to touch on the issue of enforcement. Mm-hmm. And, that's not something we have done at all. We, as you guys know, we don't have a local police department in this community. So, there isn't a police officer to, whatever, if they see too many people seated in a restaurant, and they're not within their capacity limits. I mean, there's not an officer to go and, tell them, look, you gotta close up because you got too many people here or something like that. So, and quite honestly, neither have I, been trying to check in on businesses to make sure that they're following the rules. I don't honestly feel like that enforcement issue is a part of what I should be doing. I would much rather be encouraging businesses to get open as they can rather than, trying to put them in a headlock and nitpick them. But
John, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office does patrol, and we pay him to enforce both state and local laws. So if the need arises, they are a resource.
Yes, and I'm aware of that. We do have law enforcement in this community. The town has a contract with the Sheriff's Department to provide services during the evening, 7 nights a week. The daytime coverage in this community is actually done by the state troopers, with the exception of the school resource officer, who is a sheriff, Sergeant Lynch. But he is designated to be, at the high school. It's a little different right now. He is actually out patrolling right now because of COVID-19 and school is closed. So, you know, rather than just send him home, it was agreed with the sheriff's department that Sergeant Lynch would, you know, patrol the community during the daytime now rather than being present at the school. So, but you're right. There is a police department here that, you know, provides services. They're just not our police department. They don't answer to me or you know, to the town select board. They answer to the sheriff.
I just want to be clear that I was coming from the perspective of just making sure that our business owners know what they should be doing so that they are following the rules in case somebody is patrolling or something, that they know what the regulations are and assistance with complying with them, because sometimes problem solving with how to go through the guidance is a challenge. So I was looking from that perspective.
They definitely, from my office anyway, the majority of local business owners, whether directly from me, you know, some have reached out just for some guidance or some additional information, but whether it's directly from me or passed through the EDA or, you know, through state, Tim Smith's office has also been forwarding a lot of information as well regarding new restrictions, and so they've definitely had plenty, probably likely have multiple opportunities on the same information. I know oftentimes I get 3 or 4 emails of pretty much the exact same thing from 3 or 4 different sources. So I'm sure the local business owners are getting the exact same thing. So.
Okay, great.
Does anybody else have any feedback or questions?
Am I still on audio or am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Sorry. Okay. I don't get to get out much and talk with people, so this is now my social hour for the evening. I just was online looking, and I was just online looking. I didn't see the regulation for face mask in meetings where there's 25. And overall, the governor's never taken the position you must wear a face mask. It was highly recommended. You can go into businesses downtown, everywhere, and they'll say you must wear one to come into business, or it's recommended, or there's no notice at all. So there's clearly the recommendation that you wear a mask when you're going into businesses or in gatherings. But I'd like someone to show me the one about the mask.
I think you're right about that, Jim. It is only highly recommended.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. The governor never actually made wearing a mask part of the regulations of the executive orders.
So,
They simply said we highly recommend it and we want people to do it.
Right, there's some of the guidance that requires masks for some organizations. That's part of why it's challenging and murky. So it kind of depends on what your organization is and what your project is and how far apart you are and all of that. The rules are a little different.
Pardon me, unless I get misinterpreted again, which happens to me several times a day. All of my job sites have all the required COVID information up. All my guys are wearing masks during the day, no matter where they are or how they're working. They've actually been fantastic about it because I find it onerous. They've been fantastic about it. And then on the other hand, we need to get out of this. And if you look at the numbers and the statistics, we are an environment, we are a locale that can get out of this in the context of very low exposure kind of thing. So I didn't see the face mask thing. So I just there was a long conversation about the COVID thing. So I was searching for that because it just resonated that that's the case. Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay. If nobody else has anything to add, we'll move on to requests for changes to the website information for trustees and staff. That's you.
Yeah. So I brought this up to John when he called last week. think it was last week. It's only Tuesday, right? Because we're here.
Yeah, it was Friday.
Okay. I had a whole week where every day was Tuesday recently. It was bizarre. But anyway, something that I was thinking about in terms of accessibility and stuff for the community and the municipalities is not everybody knows who we are, who the trustees are, who's running the village, right? Who's working, they know John, we know they know John. So I was wondering what everybody else thought about maybe having a page on for the trustees where we have a little picture and a short little biography of who we are, like three sentences, pretty simple, straightforward. That way it might help people know who we are so that we seem a little bit more approachable, so that when they come to a meeting, they'll have a basis if they've never been to a meeting before. They'll just have a little bit of an idea who they're talking to. I've heard of a lot of, like in school board meetings, when people go and they're part of the audience, I've heard the comment of, I don't even know who you all are. And it's a little off-putting for somebody who's just, who's coming to support somebody or make a request. So it was a thought I had. It might, something that we could do just to be a little bit more inviting to the community, as we're hoping the community engages a little bit more.
Sounds like a good idea. It's always nice to put a human face behind some things sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If I could add to that, the website currently has a page listing village officials, including the trustees and all the elected and appointed officials. It'd be relatively easy for us to flesh that out with some photos and, as you said, a little bio. So if the trustees wish for that to happen and John supports that, then I would suggest that you could email me that information and we could get that up on the site pretty quickly.
Awesome. That would be exciting. I did also go one step further with my wonderings, and I was wondering about village email addresses for accessibility for communication with trustees as well. Not really sure if there's supposed to be an official chain of command where somebody has something they want to say to the trustees, if it needs to go to John and then if it goes to us, or being accessible directly, if that's a possibility too. Again, kind of going back to school board, is go to the school board. I email a school board member if I'm looking for something from the school board. So that was another I wonder as well.
Thanks for bringing that up, Heather. I actually kept meaning to do that. Updating the phone systems in the village office would allow everybody to have an email address, a village email address, which could be easily changed as trustees and employees come in and go. Something that's cohesive, that somebody new to town knows that, okay, as long as you know your name and it's Enosburg .village whatever.
So if I'm understanding, well, I think there's two different ideas here. I think, Heather, you started off, I think, just suggesting that maybe Board of Trustees members also have their email addresses available to the public. And then Cindy, you sort of went same idea, but went a different direction and are suggesting, well, no, the trustees should have village-based email addresses that are published rather than
right.
personal
and
address.
that's what I was meaning, as a village email address, which you could have forwarded to your personal email account. I don't necessarily want to give my personal email account out, but I really wouldn't mind if somebody wanted to talk about something or invite me to something, that they would have a way to reach out to me.
From a technical standpoint, that's very easy to do if the board desires it.
Yeah, I would rather have a village email address than a personal one.
Yeah, that sounds
like Heather was
like a
saying,
good idea to me too.
place as board members come and go, and staff members and such.
It makes it seem more professional that we, we know what we're doing, and it's, cohesive. Everybody has the same, like in the school systems, they would all have the same
Right.
email address.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Matt, you said that wouldn't be hard to make that happen.
Correct.
What does the rest of the board think? Jason, Leonard?
I think those are both good ideas. The bio and the email
Yeah.
address.
Yeah, okay.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and if everyone's on board, I don't think that there's any reason why we shouldn't. Put a little smile up on the.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd want to go about doing the email addresses, Matt, but
We have an existing convention, which is first initial, last name at enosburg.net, and I would suggest we continue with that
yeah, let's do that.
convention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you need us to come in to get that set up, or
No, not at all.
even better?
But you'd
So-
let us all know what our email addresses are, right?
No, don't. Let them guess.
Yes, I can set that up, and I can send you the information about how to access that email account, etc.
Awesome.
Yep.
And would we send pictures and like a bio information to you, Matt, to maybe clean up? Should we make up our own? Have official? How do we want to do like the picture and the bio?
You can certainly send stuff to me and let me gather it, and then I'll put it through to John for review and making sure that everything's kind of consistent.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Does it have to be a recent picture?
I think the intent was for someone in the community to recognize you when they saw you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think your picture is recent, Matt.
You think?
Oh, that's the second zinger Matt's got on that photo. Leonard came into the office a couple of weeks ago and he said, Matt, I couldn't even recognize, who was that 19-year-old kid in that picture? I didn't even know that was you.
That's not Matt Miner, that's admin.
While I'm talking about the website, I do want to say it's looking pretty good. I like that I can point people just to the direction of go to the website, and the calendar being right on the right hand side is really nice. So thanks for the work with that.
Thank you.
Okay. You changed the website, which is good. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on that? Okay.
Nope. Let's keep it moving.
All right. John, you want to give us a manager's report?
Yes. About 2 months ago, the Governor Scott created a Vermont Community Support and Local Action Team. This is a group of people that the governor assembled to look at COVID-19 related issues. All of the people that are on this action team were appointed by the governor. And this action team distributed a survey around the state looking for what people believe should be the top priorities the state of Vermont government should be focusing on as we try to work through all of the issues that this virus has created for us and resolve them and try to get things back to normal again. And that's going to be a tremendous effort. I mean, the recovery of this is going to be a long time. And I think most people understand that now. This isn't going to be over in a few months, not the, the true recovery of it. It may very well be years before we get, back to where we were, say, January 1st of this year. So the local action team has released what the top 6 priorities that they were able to identify in the survey responses were. And presumably these are the things that this action team is going to be focusing on related to COVID-19 recovery. So the first is ending family homelessness in Vermont. The second was activate local foods to feed Vermonters. The third was support childcare and youth programming. The fourth was support or restart Vermont small business loan and grant program. The fifth was implement a statewide buy local challenge. And the sixth was to expand broadband internet and mobile telecommunications infrastructure. So there wasn't a lot of detail that was given in this press release that I received about this local action committee, but these were the top 6 priorities that they had identified. We know a little bit more about the broadband directive because that's been kind of an ongoing issue with the Public Utility Commission for at least 2 years. They've been sort of pushing and looking at this issue, particularly with electric utilities, and that's why those of us that have been with the Village of Enosburg Falls for a few years are aware that that's been a priority for the PUC because they've been attempting to put a lot of pressure on electric utilities to expand their services and also become broadband providers. Not just electric companies. So we'll see where those things go. And I've got a little more update on that broadband expansion too at the end of this. So also wanted the board to be aware that I wrote a letter of support recently on behalf of the village to have Northwest Regional Planning Commission serve as the state mandated clean water service provider for the Missisquoi Bay Basin. This is a new designation that our state legislature mandated, that we now in the various watershed areas throughout the Lake Champlain watershed have to have an organization that is designated as your water service provider or your clean water service provider, I should say. The mission, the details of what this new designation is going to do is still pretty vague, at least in my understanding. But I think the purpose is that this organization, whoever ends up becoming your clean water service provider in whatever region you live in, for us it's the Missisquoi Bay Basin, they're tasked with the job of trying to clean the lake, trying to lower the phosphorus levels in Lake Champlain as much as they reasonably can. Or Vermont, probably most of you are at least residually aware of the EPA's stance regarding the state of Vermont and phosphorus pollution in Lake Champlain. And because of EPA's involvement now with the Lake Champlain cleanup, the state is sort of under the gun to meet particular criteria over a long period of time. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen, in 5 years or even 10 years. I mean, this is decades, plural with an S, mission to try and clean up all of the phosphorus issues in that lake. And Vermont, is not the only entity that borders Lake Champlain. Vermont is there, and so is Quebec. And why EPA is not coming down as hard on New York as they are Vermont is, EPA says, well, they did the studies and New York is not polluting as much as Vermont is. And you may or may not believe that. I guess you'll have your own opinion. And obviously Quebec, there's nothing EPA can do about that. Quebec's a different country. So they have no jurisdiction over Quebec. But this is another step related to the phosphorus cleanup in Lake Champlain. And once this service provider is designated, they're supposed to work with other organizations in the designated region to try and help clean up the water issues in that watershed. So I wrote a letter in support of NRPC becoming that service provider. Interestingly enough, they were the only organization in our area to submit a proposal to the state of Vermont anyway. So they will most likely become the service provider here, simply because no one else seemed interested in doing it. But regardless of that, I wanted you guys to be aware that on behalf of the village, I did submit this letter. The reason I didn't give you, more heads up about it was there was a tight deadline on getting that letter of support in to be included with NRPC's proposal to the state. And we weren't going to have another board meeting prior to that. So, but I still wanted you to let you know I did this. So hopefully everybody's okay with that. And if you're not, you can give me a call and give me a peace of mind or 2 cents about it. Also wanted to make you guys aware, attached you'll find the advertisement instructions to bidders for the CSO level monitoring project, small purchase order number 1 bid, which we're working on. And this item will be the bids, whatever we receive, will be on your next agenda, which I believe is the 26th of June. So you'll see those bids from this CSO level monitoring package at your next agenda on the 26th. And hopefully we get some good ones. You can review them and we'll have one that the board ends up approving. But I wanted you to see the advertisement as it went out to the websites and the papers, which is attached to the manager's report. And then lastly, I wanted to give you guys a little bit more information about this broadband issue. The Vermont Department of Public Service has unveiled a broadband action plan. So this is outside of the Vermont Community Support and Local Action Team. This is the Vermont Department of Public Service, a part of the regulating entity over electric utilities in the state. And they have unveiled a broadband action plan, noting it will cost between $80 million and $300 million to provide universal broadband coverage to the remaining 23% of Vermonters who do not have this access. That's the percentage that is estimated by DPS of Vermonters that currently don't have broadband access in Vermont. And the price tag that they're estimating is somewhere between $80 million and $300 million to get that infrastructure out to that remaining 23% so they can have broadband access. Ken Nolan, the general manager of VEPSA, has been named to a weekly committee that is run by Representative Tim Briglin to investigate the details further on enacting this DPS plan. So they're currently, as of about 3 weeks ago, they've got this committee together, and it's made up of different representation in the state of Vermont. Some, like Ken Nolan, are representing an organization directly related to local governments in Vermont. Some are part of the legislature, like Tim Briglin. he's a representative in the House of Representatives for the state. Some, my understanding is, are private business owners in the state. So it's a variety of different people that apparently have been named to this task force by DPS to sort of flush out these issues related to the expansion of broadband coverage and figure out, you know, whether it's really feasible, and if so, you know, how much is it going to cost? I mean, 80 million to 300 million is a pretty wide margin. But if it ends up being, you know, closer to 300 million, that is a huge sum of money, $300 million. I can also tell you that I know that the state is looking at the federal relief funds that are expected to come into Vermont, and sort of eyeballing that pot of money as a possibility to fund the further expansion of broadband. So I think I may have brought this up to the board once before, but if not, Vermont is earmarked to get 1.2 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars from the federal government to assist Vermont with COVID-19 recovery issues. So that's a pretty big chunk of change for this little state. And I know that the PUC and the governor's office have been looking at that pot of money as, you know, a potential way to fund this 80 to 300 million dollars that would be estimated to be needed on broadband. That would be interesting if they chose to end up using some of the money that way. But I just thought I'd share that with you as well. And that's it for manager's report.
Okay, thank you, John. Does anybody have any other business?
I would just like to get put on the agenda for your next meeting. It's late, and I have just the usual sort of things to discuss with you, let you know some things, okay?
Enosburg Initiative?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, no problem, Jim. I hadn't heard from you for a while, and it seemed like you were taking a small break, so I didn't put you on this one. But if you're ready to start coming in and giving reports to the board again, I'll put you on the next agenda.
Yeah, it's tied into trying to get our first live meeting. And I put out a note today, John, as well, and others about the EFEDC getting back in a room and talking a little bit. And it's certainly been quiet. There's a few things going on, and again, I'll take some time next time. For me, and both, I think for you, but for me, it's late. So, well, if we can just get on next week, I'll be prepared. I'll have a list of things, or maybe an email for you all. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. So I have a little bit of other business, and I had spoke with Gary about the hole from where the water main broke. I think back in February. There's a hole on 108 and Pearl Street, Main Street and Pearl. And looking at the so he wanted to wait until they were paving the other 4 projects that we had planned doing, to do an overlay over that hole to pave it up good again. And looking at the revised timeline, that's not going to work for me. I don't want that hole there to be until October. So I would like to see if there's any way that we could get that repaired before.
When did you last speak with Gary about that, Sam?
Week and a half.
Week and a half ago, is that what I heard?
About, yeah, they were cutting holes. They cut it all for animals.
It is going to be taken care of quickly. We have hired a private contractor to come in because we don't have the resources and the right equipment with our highway department to do a good job with that. So we hired a firm. We got a quote. It was within my parameters to approve as village manager. It came in at the quote Gary got from this guy, who was the only person that could respond quickly to him came in at $4,700 to do a good patch on that whole intersection and make it, decent again.
It's road mix, not cold patch.
No, this is not cold patch.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Yeah. No, for 4,700, better not be cold patch.
All right.
So, and Gary told me that this guy said he could be up here next week.
Okay.
So I don't know what happened, in your conversation with Gary, but in my conversations with Gary 4 days ago or so, this is what he updated with me. And I looked at the estimate that he got from this private paving contractor down in St. Albans. And because it was under the amount that I have approval to give authority on, I decided to, make an executive decision. I told him to hire the guy, get him scheduled as quickly as possible, which he did. And he told me the guy could be here next week.
Okay, awesome. Yep, as long as that problem will get resolved here fairly soon. And
Yeah, I'll double check with Gary tomorrow, but that's what he told me.
okay, yep, no problem.
Okay.
I'm into this paving issue tonight with Sam. If I could ask, who's that vendor, please? Hungerford?
Yes, yes, I believe it was Hungerford. I was looking at my files to see if I could reach him, but I believe it was Hungerford.
Yeah, he's a good vendor. He's good. I've used him. I've seen his work. He came out of nowhere. He's of the Hungerford, St. Albans, and he has a construction company. He's gone almost all exclusively to paving now. So
yeah, I haven't worked with him, but I asked Gary, had he worked with him before? Gary, you may know, Jim was worked for a private contractor for a long time before he came to work for the village. And Gary said, yeah, he had worked with Hungerford in the past and thought he was very good, very reputable, didn't have any issues hiring him. So.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree for what that's worth.
All right. Does anybody else have anything? Hearing none, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
I'll make
motion
the
to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
All right, we have Leonard with a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right.
Yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Good meeting, guys.
All right.
Seeing
May
you
have a
all.
good
Good meeting.
Have a good night, everyone.
Everybody, take care.